They thought Serena was just a disgraced daughter in uniform, while her sister Clara, pearls gleaming, led the charge to erase her from their father's will. What they didn't know, Serena held the Medal of Honor, and their father's final words. When courtroom tapes revealed the truth, the same gallery that once scoffed now stood in stunned silence. Stick around, because when the truth speaks louder than privilege, even the perfect daughter can fall. And Clara. She's about to learn honor isn't worn, it's earned. Drop your location and the time you're watching in the comments below. We appreciate every subscriber who joins our community. In the austere confines of the Franklin County Courthouse, Clara Maddox straightens her Chanel suit, her manicured fingers tracing the heirloom pearls at her throat. The morning light, streaming through towering windows, catches the diamonds on her rings, symbols of the wealth and status she's cultivated as one of Boston's rising legal stars. Her eyes narrow as her sister Serena, still in her combat medic uniform, steps into the courtroom. The whispers start immediately. Clara watches with calculated satisfaction as phones emerge from pockets recording the moment. She knows the hashtag #medal dispute is already gaining traction. She'd made sure of that with strategic leaks to legal blogs the night before. The sound of her Louboutins clicking against marble fills the silence. As she approaches the podium, each step a declaration of dominance. "Your Honor." Clara's voice rings clear and cold. "My sister chose to abandon our father's carefully laid plans for her future in law. Now she dares to claim an equal share of his estate." She pauses, savoring the collective intake of breath from the gallery. The pearl necklace weighs heavy against her collarbone, her mother's gift for following the path Serena rejected. But something shifts when Serena rises. There's no tremor in her sister's scarred hands as she unpins the Medal of Honor from her uniform. The metallic clink as it touches the evidence table slices through Clara's carefully constructed confidence. This wasn't how it was supposed to feel. The social media storm she'd orchestrated suddenly seems hollow against the weight of that simple sound. Clara's fingers instinctively reach for her briefcase. Inside, their father's will rests beside newspaper clippings of Serena's military honors. The headlines mock her. "Maddox's daughter saves platoon under heavy fire." She'd spent years building her reputation in mahogany-lined offices, while Serena built hers in blood-soaked battlefields. "The evidence will show." Clara continues, her voice steady, despite the unfamiliar flutter of doubt in her chest, that our father's legacy belongs in the hands of those who honored his wishes. She glances at their mother, Evelyn, seated in the front row, seeking the approval she's always chased. But Evelyn's eyes are fixed on Serena's medal, something like regret shadowing her features. A young clerk's phone screen catches Clara's attention. The medal dispute tweets are exploding, but not as she'd planned. "Combat medic faces family betrayal," reads one headline. "Sister attempts to strip hero's inheritance," declares another. Clara's carefully crafted narrative is slipping through her fingers like sand. Type legacy if you've ever questioned whether success means what you thought it did. Standing before the judge, Clara's polished armor begins to crack. Her sister's quiet dignity, the weight of that medal on the table, the growing murmurs from the gallery. They all seem to ask, what is the true cost of ambition? The pearls at her throat feel like a noose, each bead a reminder of choices made and paths chosen. The morning light shifts, casting long shadows across the courtroom floor. Clara Maddox, who has never lost a case, who has never questioned her right to win, finds herself facing an unexpected adversary, the growing realization that perhaps she's fighting on the wrong side of justice. Will the walls of privilege and presumption that Clara Maddox has built around herself withstand the tremors of truth? As the judge calls the court to order, the answer hangs in the balance, along with something far more precious than any inheritance. Clara Maddox stared at the mahogany shelves lining her office walls, each leather-bound volume of her father's law collection seeming to judge her silently. Running her perfectly manicured fingers across their spines, she remembered how he'd smile when she recited case law at dinner, while Serena would sit quietly, already dreaming of battlefields instead of courtrooms. "A Maddox belongs in law," Clara whispered to herself, echoing their father's words as she adjusted her pearl necklace, his graduation gift to her. The weight of it felt heavier today, like a chain rather than an ornament. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she paced, the sound ricocheting off the walls of her corner office at Maddox & Associates. Pulling out a worn leather album, Clara's hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The photographs inside told stories she'd deliberately ignored. There was Serena at 8, wearing their father's old army medals, while he watched with unmistakable pride. Another showed her sister's high school graduation, where Dad's usual stern expression had softened into something Clara had rarely seen. Pure joy. "This can't be right," Clara muttered, her voice catching. She'd spent years building a narrative about Serena's choices, the rebellious daughter, the family disappointment, the manipulation of their father's military sentimentality. But these photos painted a different picture, one that made her stomach churn. Dr. Harrison's research paper on familial cognitive bias lay open on her desk, its clinical language now seeming to mock her. Siblings often construct self-serving narratives to justify their position within family hierarchies. Clara's throat tightened as she recognized herself in those words. A message notification lit up her phone. Another article about Serena's battlefield heroics being shared across social media. Maddox Medic was trending with thousands praising her sister's courage under fire. Clara's carefully constructed world began to crack. "Have you seen this?" her junior partner, Thomas, asked from the doorway, holding up his tablet. "Your sister's unit is being awarded for saving 38 soldiers in that ambush. The ceremony's next week." Clara waved him away, but her hand shook as she reached for another album. This one held the last family photo before Serena deployed. Dad's arm around her sister's uniformed shoulders, his chest puffed with pride. Clara had refused to be in that picture, claiming a critical case needed her attention. Her mother's words from yesterday echoed. "Your father never once said he was disappointed in Serena. That was all you, Clara. You created that story because you couldn't bear not being the only star in his eyes." Standing before the wall of law books, her shield, her justification, Clara noticed something she'd overlooked for years. Between the volumes on contract law and civil procedure sat her father's military service medal, carefully preserved in a small display case. He'd placed it there himself, right at eye level, in his own quiet rebellion against the legal legacy he'd built. Type, "Truth hurts." If you've ever discovered your whole world was built on a lie. Clara whispered to herself, imagining the social media comments that would flood in if her story ever got out. Her perfect narrative was unraveling thread by precious thread. The pearl necklace felt like it was choking her now. Clara caught her reflection in the window. Power suit, perfect hair, every inch the successful attorney. But for the first time, she saw something else, fear. Fear that she'd been wrong. Fear that her sister's choice to serve hadn't been a betrayal, but a fulfillment of their father's deepest values. Opening her laptop, Clara began searching through old email exchanges with their father. Each one revealed his subtle attempts to bridge the gap between his daughters, attempts she'd deliberately misinterpreted or ignored. Her chest tightened as she realized how deeply she'd twisted every interaction to maintain her position as the good daughter. The sun was setting over the city skyline when Clara finally admitted what she'd been avoiding for hours. Her entire case against Serena was built on a foundation of jealousy and deliberate misunderstanding. The legal arguments she'd prepared suddenly seemed hollow, mere weapons crafted from her own insecurity. Her phone buzzed again. Another news alert about Serena's heroics. Clara's finger hovered over the delete button, but instead she found herself reading the full article, each word driving home. The truth she'd been running from her sister wasn't the family disappointment. Clara was becoming exactly what she'd falsely accused Serena of being. Share this post if you've ever had to face the truth about yourself. She thought bitterly, imagining how this moment of realization would resonate with others. The weight of her false narrative was becoming unbearable, crushing her beneath years of carefully constructed lies. As night fell over the city, Clara Maddox sat alone in her office, surrounded by the trappings of the life she'd chosen, facing the increasingly undeniable truth that she had become the architect of her own moral crisis. Tomorrow she would have to face Serena in court, but now the carefully prepared arguments felt like ashes in her mouth. The pearl necklace lay coiled on her desk, no longer a symbol of achievement, but a reminder of how easily pride could blind someone to the truth. The clicking of her heels had fallen silent, but the echo of her realizations would continue to resound through the halls of her conscience. Officer Clara Maddox sat rigid in the courtroom, her perfectly manicured nails digging crescents into her palms as the hospital recordings filled the space. Each beep of the medical equipment in the background felt like a hammer striking against her carefully constructed wall of lies. Her father's voice, though weakened by illness, carried an unmistakable warmth when speaking of Serena that Clara had never heard directed at herself. "Serena, my brave girl." Their father's recorded voice wavered through the speakers. "What you did in Kandahar saved so many. I've always been—" The words trailed off into a cough, but the pride was unmistakable. Clara's throat constricted as she watched the jury's expressions shift their earlier sympathy, dissolving into barely concealed contempt. The pearls at her throat, her father's last gift before everything went wrong, felt like they were choking her. Clara's fingers clutched them compulsively, twisting the strand until it nearly snapped. These same pearls had given her such confidence just hours ago, when she'd smugly watched Serena enter the courtroom in her simple combat medic uniform. Her phone buzzed incessantly in her designer handbag. Maddox's truth was trending with clips from the recording already spreading across social media. Combat medic daughter reveals shocking deathbed confession. Watch corrupt sister's empire crumble. The headlines flashed across her screen like accusations. General Linwood's approach to the witness stand made Clara's stomach lurch. His medals caught the fluorescent lighting a sharp contrast to the shame darkening his features. He had been her strongest ally in this fight, backing her claims about Serena's abandonment of their father. Now he wouldn't meet her eyes. Ms. Maddox, her own lawyer, whispered urgently, "We need to consider a settlement before—" Clara silenced him with a sharp gesture, her legal pad covered in anxious spirals and half-formed rebuttals. But how could she rebut her father's own voice? The truth she'd tried so desperately to bury was rising like floodwater, threatening to drown her carefully constructed narrative. A notification pinged her country club had suspended her membership pending the outcome of the trial. Another buzz the hospital board, where she'd cultivated so much influence, was calling an emergency meeting. Her carefully curated world was unraveling thread by thread. "Your Honor." General Linwood's voice carried across the courtroom. "I need to amend my previous testimony regarding Sergeant Maddox's service record and her communication with her father during deployment." Clara's pearls slipped through her trembling fingers, clattering across the wooden table like scattered pieces of her crumbling reputation. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent courtroom, a perfect metaphor for her undoing. The urge to flee was overwhelming, but the cameras positioned at the courtroom entrance would capture every moment of her disgrace. Maddox's truth would have fresh fodder, and Clara could already imagine the viral clips. Watch as exposed sister faces the music. Mother's face in the gallery showed no sympathy. Evelyn Maddox, who had once been Clara's strongest supporter, now sat closer to Serena's side of the courtroom, her expression a mix of disappointment and resignation. Have you ever watched your carefully constructed world dissolve in real time? Clara wondered, her pen puncturing through the legal pad as General Linwood continued his devastating testimony. Everything she'd built, the connections, the influence, the respected position in society, was built on a foundation of lies about her sister's abandonment. Now those lies were being exposed one by one, each revelation another nail in the coffin of her reputation. Drop one in the comments if you've ever watched someone's facade crack under the weight of their own deception. The worst part wasn't the public humiliation or the loss of status. It was catching glimpses of Serena's face. Not triumphant or gloating, but sad. Almost pitying. That pity burned worse than any anger could have. Time seemed to stretch like taffy as General Linwood's testimony continued, each word another brick being removed from the wall of Clara's defense. The truth about Serena's service, their father's pride, and Clara's systematic campaign to discredit her sister lay exposed under the harsh courtroom lights. By the time the judge called for a recess, Clara Maddox's world had shifted irreversibly on its axis. Her phone continued to buzz with notifications, each one a reminder that her downfall wasn't just local, it was trending across the nation. The pearls remained scattered across the table, too heavy now, with symbolism for her to gather back up. Clara Maddox's perfectly manicured fingers tremble as the nurse's devastating testimony echoes through the courtroom. The familiar weight of her mother's estate, pearls ones she'd specifically chosen to project authority today, now feels like a noose tightening with each damning word. Her carefully constructed narrative about Serena's abandonment of their father crumbles under the weight of truth. Miss Maddox? The nurse continues, her voice steady and unflinching. I personally witnessed your attempt to alter your father's medical records 3 days before his passing. You specifically requested that I omit Sergeant Maddox's video calls with his other daughter, Serena. Clara Maddox's chest constricts. The courtroom's air grows thick, suffocating. The pearls seem to tighten further as whispers ripple through the gallery. She catches fragments of harsh judgment. Disgusting. How could she call her own sister? The trending hashtag under Maddox betrayal flashes on a spectator's phone screen, and Clara Maddox feels her carefully constructed world beginning to implode. Behind her, mother's hand lands heavily on her shoulder. That touch, once a source of conspiratorial comfort, now feels like an anchor, dragging her deeper into shame. Clara Maddox remembers how they'd planned this together, convinced themselves they were protecting Dad's legacy. Now that legacy lies in tatters, exposed by their own deceit. The truth crashes through her defenses like a battering ram. Every video call she'd deleted, every letter she'd hidden, every lie she'd told about Serena abandoning their father while serving overseas. The evidence stands stark and damning against her family's name, against her name. Miss Maddox. The judge's voice cuts through her spiral. Do you have anything to say regarding this testimony? Clara Maddox rises slowly, her expensive suit feeling like armor that's finally failed her. The pearls catch the fluorescent light, throwing accusations across the courtroom walls. In the gallery, she spots Serena, her sister's military bearing, unmarred by the proceedings, those same eyes that used to look up to her, now filled with a mixture of pain and pity. Clara Maddox's voice cracks. The courtroom leans forward, chairs scraping against the floor in a symphony of anticipation. Her phone buzzes incessantly in her pocket, probably more notifications about Maddox's betrayal. The truth burns in her throat like acid. I need to tell the truth. She whispers then stronger. I need to tell the truth. The words tumble out, unstoppable now. I was wrong. I was jealous. Serena didn't abandon Dad, I did. I abandoned my integrity, my honor, everything he taught us. While she served our country, I served my own interests. I altered records, hid communications, lied to everyone, including myself. Mother's hand withdraws sharply from her shoulder. Clara Maddox stands alone now, as she should. Dad was so proud of Serena. She continues, tears finally breaking through her perfect makeup. Every video call, every letter he'd light up talking about his combat medic daughter. I couldn't stand it. I wanted to be his favorite again, like when we were kids. So I tried to erase her from his life, from his legacy. I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong. The silence in the courtroom weighs heavier than any artillery fire Serena might have faced. Clara Maddox reaches up, hands shaking, and removes the pearl necklace. It pools on the table like spent ammunition. Type "truth wins" if you believe honesty matters more than pride. The judge clears his throat. Miss Maddox, you understand this admission has serious legal implications. I do, Your Honor. I'm ready to face the consequences of my actions. Dad taught us both about honor. It's time I remembered that lesson. Clara Maddox turns to face her sister directly for the first time since the proceedings began. In Serena's eyes, beneath the hurt, she sees a glimmer of their shared childhood, of the sister who once bandaged her scraped knees and taught her to be brave. The viral hashtag continues its relentless spread, but Clara Maddox no longer fears it. The truth, however painful, feels lighter than the lies ever did. She's lost the battle for their father's estate, but perhaps in this moment of honest surrender, she's taken the first step toward reclaiming something far more precious, her honor, and maybe someday her sister's trust. Clara Maddox stands in the silent courtroom, her designer heels no longer clicking with the same confidence that once defined her. The pearl necklace, her mother's prized possession, and the symbol of everything she thought defined their family's legacy, feels heavy in her hands. Each pearl represents a lie she told herself about what it meant to honor their father. These pearls, Clara whispers, her voice trembling as she faces her sister, Serena. I thought they made me the perfect daughter. The one who stayed home, who lived the life Dad supposedly wanted for us. The soft clink of the necklace as she places it beside Serena's Medal of Honor echoes through the chamber. The contrast between the delicate pearls and the battle-worn metal strikes Clara like a physical blow. Memories flood through Clara's mind. The sneers she'd given Serena's combat boots, the cutting remarks about how their father would have wanted his daughters in pearls, not fatigues. Each remembered slight feels like acid on her tongue now. The truth she'd been running from stands before her in her sister's tear-filled eyes. Serena had lived their father's values, while Clara had only worn their appearance. I was wrong. Clara admits, her voice carrying in the hushed courtroom. So terribly wrong. Her fingers trace the edge of Serena's medal, remembering the news reports of how her sister had carried 3 wounded soldiers to safety under heavy fire. You honored Dad in ways I never could. While I was clutching these pearls and his memory like they were mine alone, you were living his courage. The courtroom seems to hold its breath as Clara steps away from the podium. Her mother Evelyn's sharp intake of breath cuts through the silence. Clara? Evelyn whispers, but Clara raises her hand. No, Mom. We were wrong. Both of us. We wrapped ourselves in these pearls and these assumptions about what Dad would have wanted, but Serena... Clara's voice breaks. Serena carried his true legacy into battle. She saved lives just like he did. While we were fighting over his estate, she was fighting for everything he believed in. The viral hashtag, Maddox Truth, that had been trending since the case began, takes on new meaning as Clara pulls up the security camera footage from her phone. Look at this, all of you, she says, her voice stronger now. While I was filing motions to contest Dad's will, my sister was earning this medal. While I was trying to preserve what I thought was his legacy, she was building it. The footage plays showing Serena in combat carrying her wounded comrades to safety. The sound of gunfire in the video makes Clara flinch, but she forces herself to watch. This is what matters. Not the pearls, not the estate, not our assumptions about what makes a proper daughter. Clara approaches her sister, each step an admission of defeat and revelation. The estate is yours, Serena, all of it. But more importantly, she reaches for her sister's hand. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for every time I made you feel less than worthy of Dad's name. You carried it with more honor than I ever did. Heartwarming. Type truth heals if you believe in the power of admitting when we're wrong. Serena's quiet tears fall as Clara embraces her the pearl necklace forgotten on the podium. In the gallery, phones capture the moment, but for once Clara doesn't care about appearances. The truth settles over her like a weight lifted. Her father's legacy wasn't in his possessions or his expectations, but in the courage to do what's right. Your Honor. Clara addresses the judge, her voice clear and strong, despite her tears. I'd like to withdraw all claims to the estate, and I'd like to request that my sister's Medal of Honor be displayed in our father's study, where his own medals rest. It's time both collections told the true story of the Maddox legacy. The soft murmur of approval that ripples through the courtroom feels like absolution. Clara Maddox, who entered this battle armed with pearls and prejudice, leaves it with something far more precious, the understanding that true legacy isn't inherited in jewels or estates, but earned through actions that honor what matters most. Share this moment if you've ever discovered that the truth you were fighting against was the very thing you needed most. Maddox Truth.